Now, one thing that Kotlin comes with is the ability to have default parameters. So here, for instance, I have a function, as we saw, that takes 2 parameters. Let's say that I want to add a third parameter. So I can do, for instance, z equals int, and I'm going to add a z. Now, when I call this down here, I do sum 1, 2, 3. If I want, for instance, one of the parameters to have a default value, I can do so by simply adding an equals and then the value in the declaration. So what this means is that this sum function can now work with 2 parameters or with 3. But if we don't provide the third parameter, it will default it to 0. So I can now call sum 1 and 2. And this is good because it provides us with the ability to have functions that have default parameters and avoid us having to create multiple overloads of this function in our classes or in just top level. So in a language such as Java or C#, well, C# also has default parameters, but in a language such as Java, there are no default parameters. So you can have the same function call, but overloaded with different options in each one. So this again cuts down on boilerplate code. We can make this kind of like multiple parameters. So let's say that I add a 4th parameter here that is, for instance, w, and this is also of type integer, and it also is 0, and this adds a w as well. So now I get the 4th parameter here that again is optional. Now what happens when we do, for instance, a case where we have multiple parameters and we want to pass a specific one and not another one? So here I have sum 1, 2, 3, so it knows that it's defaulting on the last parameter. Here is 1, 2, so it's taking the first 2 and it's defaulting on the last. What happens if I want to pass in the w but not pass in the z? Now in this specific case it doesn't make much sense, right? Because I mean the end result is going to be the same. So let's create a better function. For example, let's say for example print details. And this is a function that takes a name, string, an email, which is of type string as well, and a phone, which is of type string. And we do print line, and we'll do name, and email is email, and then we'll do, last but not least, phone is phone. So if I make this one default, and let's go ahead now and call this function, print details, you can see that it provides me the completion, and it says to me, okay, the second parameter can be default. Okay, so I can say, for example, Hadi, and then I'll pass in 555, 1, 2, 3. Okay, now here we already have a problem, because it's the default parameter is the second one and not the third. So the compiler kind of is lost here because it doesn't know what it's doing. Are you passing the parameter in for phone, or are you passing it for email? So we can actually do named parameters. So I can say that the phone here is actually 555, 1, 2, 3, right? So this allows me to now run this, and then it would print out the hello, the name, Hadi, email blank, which is the default, and phone 555, 1, 2, 3. And it's allowing me to do this with named parameters. Because otherwise, if we remove this, there's ambiguity. It doesn't know, what is this? Is this the email or is this the actual phone? Now, if I type in email, it's still going to give me an error because it's going to say, but phone isn't an optional value, so you need to pass in something. So I can now make this also default to an empty string or not available, for instance, and now that's all okay. But given that we have named parameters, what we can also do is leverage this and actually define the order in which we want to pass in values. So I don't need to do phone 555, 1, 2, 3. I can actually reverse the order. I can take this one and place it here and pass it in different order. So this named parameters not only gives us the ability to allow us to have default options in any location, but we can also change the order in which we pass in parameters. This is also very useful when we have functions that take multiple parameters. Like if a function takes 4 or 5 parameters, you often get lost what exactly each parameter means when you're looking at the call made to that actual function. Now, using named parameters allows us to add a little bit more expressiveness and semantics to the code. Not that I recommend that we create functions with 5, 6, 7 parameters. For that, it's always better to kind of use like a data object or something similar to that. But in cases where we can't control the API and we need to have so many of these parameters being passed in, named comes in quite useful.